So I'm going to move through these next slides pretty quickly. We'll get through them, and just I want you to know what's in the presentation, and you have access to this presentation. The email that went out, I think Karl or others have sent emails that indicate where you can get the entire presentation. So if you go back to pre-pandemic, February 2020, that was the last sort of peak pre-pandemic month before the pandemic hit. If you go from there, wages have grown about 24%, CPI inflation about 21%, and core about 19%. So wages have outgrown inflation. We have more purchasing power on this based on this measure than we did in February of 2020, and on 19 and 18 were lower than February of 2020. So if Republicans loved 2019, they should love 2024 because they have more purchasing power, but none of them believe that. When you look at net worth has grown even more than wages. So net worth of the bottom 50% is up almost 90% since the fourth quarter of 2019. This is a quarterly measure. And the net worth of the 50th to 90th group is up 44%. So that's the upper middle class. And I don't even put the rich on here because they don't care about inflation one way or the other. Isn't going to hurt them very much. The hourly wages and inflation, that's what I just showed you, 24% and 20. So people are much better off in 2023. And if you look at that net worth, if you look at back into 2022 even, that's when people sort of peaked out in terms of being the richest ever. That's when the net worth numbers peaked, is in 2022. And as you can see from the diagram, wages have been ahead of inflation throughout this period. The inflation has never been above the hourly wages, cumulatively speaking. This is what the hourly wage looks like. Real means adjusted for inflation. So whenever you see that word real, adjusted for inflation, the wage is about $29.83. It's almost $30 an hour. And it was $29 an hour in February of 2020. There was this weird spike because millions of low-wage workers lost their job. And so that drove the average crazy up. And as those workers have come back into the labor force, come off the sidelines and they were unemployed, come back into working again, the number has come down. And now it's creeping back up again. So notice that at no point did this wage, was it lower than the pre-pandemic? Even at this lowest point here in the middle of 2022, it was always above the pre-pandemic level. And if you look at the long view, I just showed you this upper right corner. This slide here is the upper right corner of this diagram. This goes all the way back to 1965. We had very high real wages in 72. And then you had, the union busting and the deregulation and more international trade starting. You had women entering the workforce in large numbers. The real wage actually got down into the 24 range down here. This is middle of the Clinton world. And then it's been climbing for a long time. We should not assume that this number always climbs, right? It's been here before, it was down, it's back up again. Let's hope it stays there. But it isn't a number that always grows with the population, kind of like GDP does. There's a lot more to it than that. These numbers are extremely high. And under Biden in 2021, we had the highest average year ever, almost $30 right there. When you look at the presidential average, Biden actually is the president with the highest average real hourly wages of all the presidents. Trump's right behind him. And then you have to go back to that spike, way back when, Nixon and Ford. And then you go into the other presidents that are here. Notice that Reagan is not a high achiever on this measure. So this is something that I think nobody else outside of this call or people that follow me on Twitter know about, because you never hear this in the news. But Biden is the record holder for the highest real wages of any president on average. Wages have grown faster at the bottom of the scale. So lower wage people have seen faster growth in wages than the higher wage people. The Congressional Budget Office just did a great report. The citation is down here. What they're saying is that income has outgrown inflation comparing 2023 to 2019. So in other words, we have more purchasing power now than before the pandemic. You can buy the same stuff with a smaller share of your income now because income has outgrown the inflation. And CBO is as definitive a source as you can get. This is just some math. The point I'm making here is that if you look at this as like your basic budget of a person, income minus taxes is your after-tax income, then you spend on stuff, and then what's left is your saving. Inflation applies to this number. while your wages apply up here. So if wages and inflation, if they were even to grow the same amount, you would be ahead because this wage gain is applied to a much bigger number than the inflation number. And if you don't believe that, the math is here. You can look at it, but we are significantly better off than we were. This extra $3 of savings is on a $7 base. It's 50% more you're able to save because of a 24% wage gain and 21% inflation. Part of why we have a boom. People don't understand this math. I'm going to skip this one. Biden and Trump. Biden has, as at this point in his presidency, has a much higher S&P 500 stock market return, 57% versus 38%. But Trump will be catching up, and Trump ends up a little bit above this peak. So we'll see if Biden gets there. But right now, Biden is ahead. Inflation nowadays is almost all shelter, meaning rent. For the most part, there's a little bit car insurance and then other things. It's almost all being driven by rent these days. So keep that in mind. Can the Fed really do much about rent? Is it making it worse because of high interest rates? People can't build housing. That's something the Fed is very concerned with. I thought this chart breaks it down into what's really driving the inflation. I'll skip this one. We talked about this one. Daily travel volumes are up 6% this year versus last year so far, year to date. So when you talk about measures that aren't these large aggregates, kind of getting into the what they call microeconomics of where these different markets are, people are traveling. They feel very, very well like they can spend. ACA marketplace enrollment has nearly doubled from pre-pandemic. This is directly because of Biden's policies, the American Rescue Plan and the Inflation Reduction Act. They both enhanced the subsidies and made it easier to qualify for this. And so we've actually seen a big increase in ACA enrollment. This is clearly the record. You heard earlier about donating, so please do. It's small, it takes just a few minutes to do that, and it's not a lot of money depending on what you can do. This is a chart that tells you that almost every key measure is better in 2023 on average than 2019. And real, again, means adjusted for inflation, so you can look through these. They're all the major measures, or a lot of the major measures are on here. Almost everything is better. And in fact, if I included 2022 in here, you would also see that 2022 was a really good year as well. Here is, I joke that this is Bill's favorite chart. He likes to see these things as the kind of the bar comparisons. You're welcome to share these slides. And here's another one that's easy to cut and paste and share. Just some fast facts about the Biden economy. This is an easy one to put on Twitter or on Facebook. I stole the look from the ACL. What is it? The AFL-CIO does a version of this for different legislation. These are some links you can look at to see how Democrats compare with Republicans, and some good articles in here on that you can see, and some stuff on Twitter that you might find handy if you are a Twitter user. By all means, you're welcome to follow me on there. I do almost all tweeting charts that are in this presentation or charts like it. That's what I do all the time for fun. All right, so those are the prepared remarks. We'll pause there and we can end the recording if you like and open it up for conversation.